John beats Jim again in the HarBowl. It was the Ravens over the Chargers on Monday Night Football to end Week 12. And what does that mean for the AFC, the NFC playoff picture in the NFL after 12 weeks? Coming at you right now.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love and appreciate all of our everydayers out there and the new listeners alike. If you are new or if you've been here a while, I know a lot of you aren't even subscribed, even though you're hanging out with us every single day. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast, because you can find us everywhere, every day. It is what we do. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to get started. Matt, let's go to Monday Night Football to end Week 12. And it was the Baltimore Ravens defeating the Los Angeles Chargers 30-23. And a late charge by those Baltimore Ravens, and we can get into the nitty-gritty of this game. But what I saw was, and maybe this is what Jim Harbaugh's Chargers are this year. They're a sound football team, and if you are not that good or if you don't play sound, they're going to beat you. And for the Baltimore Ravens, that's how it started. And for the Ravens, they weren't playing super sound, and they were making some mistakes, and then they figured it out and said, you know what, never mind, we're better than you, and now we're going to go beat you. And really, the Chargers didn't quite have the firepower in the end or the talent really all around to beat those Baltimore Ravens once they figured things out and started playing well. And, oh, yeah, it helps when Derrick Henry's running for 140 yards. That's how I saw this football game. The Ravens were just better, and the Chargers weren't able to take advantage of it for 4 quarters.
Yeah, I saw a lot of the same. You know, you can hang for a half with a really good team, maybe even 3 quarters, but it's hard to go 60 minutes with a more talented team. I mean, it doesn't mean you're a better coach team or Big Brother's got little brother's number. I guess we'll figure that out over the years. But I'm not sure Big Brother wins with the checkers he has, and little brother would have won with the Ravens checkers. You know what I mean?
Right.
So from a Chargers perspective, I think this year, almost like Washington, but more so, is a success already. They're probably going to the playoffs. They're in a good position to. They have a pair of tackles and a quarterback in place, and I'm blown away with how well the defense has played all year. I still don't think it's a super talented unit. Interior of the O-line isn't as good as people seem to think. And I love McConkey, but I really thought, especially when they got in like backup or catch-up mode, they were really a receiver short, to say the least. Right. I mean, big time, maybe 2.
You just look at the box score, and it's Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, first rounders. Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson is the quarterback, and you got a good quarterback on the other side. And then Justice Hill is the guy that has the knockout blow, a 51-yard run late, giving you a different look than Derrick Henry. And so you get pounded with Henry all game long, and all of a sudden a little quicker version of a running back comes out there, and I thought they were going to catch him, and they just couldn't catch him. And Justice Hill's not a burner either. And so you realize, just a few bullets short were the Los Angeles Chargers in this one, when Will Dissly's your second leading receiver, and Ladd McConkey's a nice player too. Your leading receiver, he's been their leading receiver, but Jalen Reagor, and I forgot he was still in the league, and
right.
Joshua Palmer, and a dinged up J.K. Dobbins, and so you're really just falling short there if you're the Chargers. And it's really awesome what they've been doing, because we knew they were short coming into the year.
Yeah, this isn't news. McConkey's going to be a really good player. Palmer's okay. Johnston is not the answer, in my opinion, even though he put some numbers up to start the season. He's always a step slow, a page late,
Can't make the play when you need it. Flops,
No, you can't count on him. But if he's your 4, okay. That's the pecking order here, and they have a lot of cap space next year. So one more season or one more off season could go a long way, and who knows? I think they'll get in the playoffs. Maybe they go to Houston and win a game, and great. That something like that could happen too. But wanted to focus on the Ravens. Lamar was fantastic. He was better than his box score. I mean, just making plays and start-stop stuff, and a defensive tackle comes free, and he just kind of steps to the side like it's not even a thing. Or, I mean, like just toying with people at times. And penalties have been a huge problem for the Ravens this year. They're like the worst in the league in terms of penalties. And it was again in this one. But I think they got back to some things that we kind of know about them, as you mentioned. I mean, they ran for 212 yards against a good defense, any way you cut it. And they're back to rushing the passer. You know, like I really thought their pass rush suffered with the coaching changes and no Clowney and who's their closers. But they were getting after Herbert pretty consistently. Guys like Oweh are getting better and better. So the defense is in better shape, especially the pass defense, than it was early in the year. So Ravens are good. I mean, it's pretty clear. I think the Chargers are above average and the Ravens are quite good.
It did look that way. It's like, okay, the Ravens are better, even though their records aren't that far apart. And the Ravens have stumbled a few times this year. Yeah. And then before we look at the AFC in totality with the wild card standings and the playoffs, I want to just focus on the division really quick because the Steelers lost to the Browns and the Ravens win after the Steelers beat the Ravens last week. So again, it's tight. It's a half a game. It's both our 8-win teams now atop the AFC North. Steelers have one fewer loss. 8-3 are the Steelers. 8-4 are the Baltimore Ravens right now. You look at division tiebreakers, both are even, although the Steelers have played fewer games, and those are the first two division games the Steelers have played. So 1-1 and 2-2 in the division as far as tiebreakers go. This is going to go down to, by the way, do they play each other in week 18? I hope they do.
No, Steelers play the Bengals. So okay. I think most people know this because it's really, really weird. But the Steelers have played back-to-back AFC North games, and they still have 4 more. So 6 of their final 8 games were their AFC North games, and they have head-to-head against the Ravens in their favor. But Hard Knocks AFC North is coming out next week, and I think that's not a coincidence that all these AFC North games, especially Pittsburgh, are still remaining. You know, I mean, it's weird that you play 6 of your final 8 games are your division games. So I'm about ready for the Hard Knocks crew to get out of my parking spots down at the Steelers facility too, by the way. They got their trailers set up everywhere. But so the Steelers basically have a game and a half or a half game on the Ravens, but they also have the head-to-head. So they got to go to Baltimore though in a couple weeks.
So they're going to play again really soon then against
Yeah. That would be great if it was week 18 though.
And then obviously record-wise, Bengals are in a rough spot at 4-7, and even worse spot for the Cleveland Browns at 3-8. And the Browns aren't going to do anything. And I mean, you look at the Bengals 4-7, and we talked about them. Man, if they make the playoffs, they have to win every game essentially. You have to have 10 wins to get in the AFCs too, right? Can you sneak in with 9-8 in the AFC wild card?
So the Steelers go to Cincinnati this week. I kind of feel like that's a must win for the Bengals because the Bengals are already at 5 conference losses. I don't think they can win the division, and conference losses are the first tiebreaker for wild card. So if you go to 4-8 with a division and conference loss this week, that might be sayonara, you know.
The good news is that a couple of the teams aren't that far ahead of the Cincinnati Bengals because you have the Indianapolis Colts would currently be the 8 seed. And they're at 5-7. So, they're only a half game up on you. And I would think that, that could be obviously leapfrog pretty quick for the Cincinnati Bengals the rest of the year. And then the Miami Dolphins are in a very similar boat, but they've got a game up and a head start there. Do the Dolphins on the Bengals if they end up battling for that 7th spot. And the conference record is already much better. 2 more wins for the Miami Dolphins in the conference. So there's a very likely chance they're going to have the tiebreaker too. But both of those teams are still chasing the Chargers and the Broncos in the AFC West. They're both 7-win teams right now, and currently the 6 and 7 seeds in the AFC wildcard.
Between the Dolphins and Colts, whose chances do you like better? I think Miami's playing better football.
Oh, easily. I mean, look, they played the Patriots, and a lot of teams have beat up on the Patriots this season. But they have a head start on the Colts and the Bengals, and I think they're better all around from what we've seen this year. I think in the end, if I was to put money on how it ended, I would think that the Dolphins, then the Bengals, then the Colts would be the final standings there.
Yes. I just pulled up a graph, though, that shows just in EPA future schedules, and the Colts play a very, very easy schedule going forward. So maybe that's their saving grace. They play some bad offenses and bad defenses, where the Bengals play bad offenses and good defenses, as do the Dolphins. But I don't look at the Colts and say, oh, that's a playoff team by any stretch.
More on the AFC and NFC playoff picture. We got some news, but not the news that we thought we'd have on a Tuesday about Daniel Jones whittling down some teams. And the Seattle Seahawks, are they the team to believe in the NFC West? In the NFC playoffs, we'll get to that picture next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Skylight Frames. Are you missing somebody this holiday season? Maybe you want them to be part of your festivities from afar. Do you live far away from your family? I live a little ways from my family, and I'm going to go visit them. But sometimes when I can't, I'd love for them to have all the latest pictures of my son, to the grandparents having the pictures of the kids, and they don't have to do anything to see those photos on the Skylight Frame. We've got the perfect gift for you this holiday season. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. You can add new photos straight from your phone from anywhere. It only takes a tap on your phone, and you send a new photo to a frame across the country, wherever it is. It's the fastest, easiest way to keep loved ones in the loop. They'll feel so much more connected to you. So if you're having trouble finding that right gift, especially if it's for like the parents or grandparents in your life, man, this is such a good one. The touchscreen is a game changer. You swipe through photos, tap to see new photos sent, tap the heart button to say thank you to the sender for sending you a new photo. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NFL. That's Skylight Frame, SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/NFL. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NFL. This episode also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And it's time to tackle the NFL action right now at FanDuel, because right now at FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL. You know, bet on the NBA and the NHL and snooker and car racing and combat sports, whatever else it is while you're there. Yeah, you could do that too. Tons of NFL props. Draft props is going to be a hot one coming soon. My favorite way to bet on the NFL is those NFL draft props and so much more. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you want to check out stats, play-by-play, and so much more, you can find that all on the same page where you're placing your bets as well at FanDuel.com. So download the app today or go to FanDuel.com. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, taking a look at the, let's just finish up our AFC conversation here. And we've got the 1 seed Kansas City Chiefs at 10-1. You got the Buffalo Bills, the 2 seed right now at 9-2. You got the AFC North leading, and those aren't going to change, right? Like they're going to be.
I don't think so.
Well, whether or not they're 1 and 2, Chiefs are going to take the West. The Bills are for sure going to take the East.
Yes, and they're going to be 1 and 2 or 2 and 1. Bills have the head-to-head against them, which is noteworthy.
And then let's skip 3 and go to the 4 seed, because right now it's the Houston Texans, and they're going to win the AFC South, and they're probably going to be the 4 seed. So I feel like we can lock those in. And
1, 2, and 4.
Right. And we can talk about what's going to happen in January to the Texans, because
I'd be worried.
Yeah, I'd be a little bit worried about where they're at right now. Just not quite where you want them to be, in plenty of time, 6 weeks to get going, right before the calendar turns to January. Then the Steelers and Ravens we just talked about, and it's looking very likely that they're going to be 3 and 5 in some way.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's 5 teams. Are we like one of the things I want to talk about today is like, are we done? How done are we? Like the NFL is chaos.
I know,
but there's so many teams in both conferences that have a nice little lead. The Chargers and Broncos are 7-win teams, and there's nobody within a win of them. The Dolphins are next in the 8th seed with 5 wins, and we just talked about the Colts 5 wins, and the Bengals are 10 right now at 4-7. Nobody else with 3 wins or fewer should be in the conversation, and maybe the Bengals shouldn't even be in this conversation. Are we done? Do we already know the playoff field in the AFC? Chiefs, Bills, Steelers, Texans, Ravens, Chargers, Broncos.
Kinda. I mean, I really feel like a Chargers win last night would have gone a long way to making me feel like they're basically in. But they finished with 2 really easy games, and they don't have all that brutal of a stretch. But I look at the Chargers and I look at Denver and think, if they can manage 3 more wins apiece between them and get to 10, that's going to do it. I mean, I don't think the Bengals or the Colts or the Dolphins can get there quite to that level. Maybe, but I think 10 probably gets you in if you can win 3 more.
And we just talked about the Bengals. Yeah. We just talked about the Bengals because they have to win out to get to 10-7. You only have to be 500 if you're the Broncos, and the Bengals would still lose the tiebreaker most likely, unless something really changes with who wins those conference games the rest of the way. And so you're in a really good spot right now if you're the Chargers or the Broncos, and obviously control your own destiny. Yeah,
mentioned that the Bengals have 5 conference losses. Miami already has 4. Colts already have 4. Chargers only have 3. Denver has 4. So we could get deep down the tiebreakers, but I definitely think the Chargers and Broncos control their own fate. You can't control your own destiny, folks. Your destiny is already pre-written. You can control your own fate, and I think they probably will. But Miami could get hot, and Cincy could get hot. I don't believe in the Colts.
I am 100% with you right there. And we haven't talked a lot about the Broncos, and I'm still kind of side-eyeing the Broncos, but they're proving me wrong, and they're playing really good football, and Bo Nix is playing better and better and looking more like a seasoned pro out there at quarterback as the season goes along, as he should, being one of the guys that's played the most college football as well. And you thought maybe he's closer, maybe he would develop quicker than the other guys. And we're seeing that with the Denver Broncos right now. And those other teams that just they made the margin for error almost impossible and too difficult to be falling multiple games ahead with 6 to play.
Yeah, just dug themselves some massive holes. And Miami's because Tua got hurt, but I mean, I'm not. Cincinnati just started really poorly. One side note on Denver, and I just heard this, that Bo Nix is rapidly closing in on Jaden Daniels for Rookie of the Year odds in Vegas right now, which I kind of understand.
Okay, well, I mean, that's a perfect segue to the NFC side of things, and we're going to mix in some mailbag questions over the next couple of episodes here to get ready for the Thanksgiving football games. And we're going to preview those on tomorrow's show along with the Black Friday game. So we're going to do a little 4-pack of games instead of our weekly 6-pack, and then we'll come back after the Thursday nighters Friday and make some picks and break down some of those games. So it'll be a packed Friday show, no Thursday Thanksgiving Day show from us. Looking at the NFC side of things, and one of our listeners asked a question about Cliff Kingsbury. And we teased the Seahawks. I want to talk a little bit more about Seahawks and the Washington Commanders specifically, because I think they're maybe 2 of the more interesting teams right now with where things are in the NFC playoff picture. Obviously, a big win for the Seattle Seahawks over the Cardinals this week. And the Washington Commanders are losing games, and they're losing games pretty rapidly, although they had a nice little head start, kind of like we're talking about with the Broncos and the Chargers in the AFC side of things. So right now, Washington has a solid lead for that wild card spot, but it's down to 1 game now for the wild card spot in the NFC as the 7 seed, but they do have 7 wins at 7-5 right now.
I'm a little nervous about Washington, though.
Yeah. So just one of our listeners asked about Cliff. Why is it happening? Yeah. And I wanted to ask a guy who watched a lot of Cliff Kingsbury football and was calling for him to be fired, and that's Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals. And he didn't like the way that the Cliff Kingsbury Cardinals went, and he thought he was not a good head coach. And I asked him, I was like, okay, well, how do you explain Cliff? You've watched him more closely, and you followed that football team with the Cardinals. What's going on? How come his teams consistently fade in the second halves of seasons? There's got to be something to it. And I was expecting a long reply, and it was like, well, this happens and then does this and this. He's it was it was a super short reply. And it made me laugh. And it was like, oh, usually, what's the saying about the correct answer is usually the simplest or whatever. And it's like he cannot adjust. Teams figure him out, and you got him, and that's it. And is that what we're seeing right now with the Washington Commanders?
Well, that's kind of where I was going to go with it too. I mean, based on his Cardinals experience, I mean, I felt like it took him a long time, or even if he did realize that he's not in the Big 12 anymore, just going to spread everything out in big wide fields and hash marks, give you all that wide side of the field and all those things. And what I mean by that is his Cardinal teams and the Commanders are following suit, although it's a little better. Like you always knew where DeAndre Hopkins was going to line up. I mean, he lined up to the left side every time. And like it was very static. They used the same personnel groupings over and over, the same route concepts over and over. And people catch on pretty quick. And I think his tendencies aren't that difficult to decipher. And I do think he probably learned a little bit of the error of his ways. And he's definitely a better coordinator than head coach. But I also think that's coming back to kind of bite him a little bit. And much like the Chargers conversation, they're a weapon away too. Like Zach Ertz can't be your number 2 receiver.
Right. And so look, after this week, especially, we talked about the Chargers, we talked about the Washington Commanders. Like, man, this team is really playing a lot better than we thought. And then you get to week 12 and you're like, oh, yeah, okay. So we're kind of seeing those things that we thought early, and they are rearing their ugly heads. And it might be
longer than we thought.
Right. Instead of 2 years, maybe it's only a 1 yeyear rebuild for those football teams.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Both things. Way ahead of schedule.
And so shout out Jeff Bull in the mailbag asked that question. And his question was more framed: are we witnessing the annual Cliff Kingsbury second half collapse? And I wanted to get kind of to the root of why it's happening. And are we seeing it? I think, yeah, I think that's what we are seeing.
I do too. And I also think Daniels hit somewhat of a rookie wall whenever he had his rib injury too, and Steelers kind of put him in a blender, and he wasn't running as much. And even like I kind of was going to talk about this with Ravens Chargers games, how we opened the show. That you'll see it in basketball a lot. Like for 3 quarters, Kansas or Duke or some powerhouse struggles with like the worst team in their conference, but then all of a sudden they just can't give you 60 minutes worth. And I kind of think that's how the season's going for the Chargers and Commanders. Like we're giving it everything we got. We just don't have enough.
Everything regresses to the mean, and that team that was hot shooting from the smaller school stops shooting quite so hot. And the team that was struggling early, they figure out the one thing that they can do to beat you, and they go down, and you don't have a center with size, and so they can just keep feeding one guy, and then all of a sudden the guys that were cold at the beginning of the game start getting hot, and it all switches. And that's what happens over the course. Like one football season is kind of like one basketball game in a lot.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That team doesn't have a center with size, but Kansas has 2, and their first one's kind of cold and didn't play his best game. But then you bring the 5-star off the bench, then I can't keep up,
And then they're legs and they're running them down the court for a full game.
It's a goofy example, but I use it all the time just to, for sample size. If I had a 3-point contest with Stephon Curry and it was first one to make one, I might win. I might. If it was first one to make 100, I would never ever win in 1,000 years.
No, yeah, that's a great analogy. I like that. The Seattle Seahawks are a team that would be the 3 seed right now as the leaders of the NFC West after a big win over the Cardinals. I want to talk about the Seahawks next, and we'll get to the rest of the NFC playoff picture. The last segment of this episode of Peacock and Williamson is sponsored by Hillsdale College, and time is our most precious commodity. So don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including history, economics, the great works of literature. Did you study these in school? Maybe. Have you studied them recently? Probably not. Is it time for a refresher? Yeah, probably. And all of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced. You can start whenever, you can tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. So go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. Hillsdale.edu/lockedon. I think you're pretty bullish on the Seattle Seahawks, if I'm not mistaken. And they were able to knock off the Arizona Cardinals and really do a number on them with the Seahawks defense and Mike McDonald's defensive unit, getting some of the players back and really starting to play at a higher level. And I've actually got a great stat here from our good friend Mike Sando. So the Seahawks in the last 63 total games since the 2021 season, McDonald has coached 11 of those 63 games.
Okay.
His defense already owns 3 of the top 5 defensive EPA per play games since then. The number 1 was their 24-3 win over the Dolphins in week 3. Number 3 of the top 5 of those defensive performances since 2021, a 26-20 win over the Broncos in week 1. And then this last week, number 5 on the list is the 16-6 win over the Arizona Cardinals, holding them to 6 points. And the offense is the strength of that Cardinals team in week 12. So the defense coming together, and they've actually been playing pretty well all year long. They've just been kind of one step forward, one step back. Do you believe the Seahawks now, Matt, might continue to take multiple steps forward instead of taking the step back again next week?
Yes, I think they're creating momentum. And there's a couple reasons why. I think the O-line went from god awful to just below average. Like they're playing a little bit better. They got a little healthier. To me, that was the biggest anchor on the team. It still worries the heck out of me. And to me, that's the biggest offseason need. But Smith-Njigba is stepping up in a massive way. He's him and Metcalf now are one of the better pairings in the league for sure. But I want to focus on the defense. It's a young coaching staff. McDonald is a first-year coach, of course, but he hired a lot of young assistants too. And from what I understand, or what I know, that defense that he brought over from Baltimore takes time to learn. It's a complex, really assignment sound, confusing defense for both quarterbacks and those running it. And I think that they're starting to get it. I think their defensive front is the backbone of the defense, with Murphy and Leonard Williams played really well, and Mafe. Like, they got a good group up front. I think Witherspoon is their little bit different, but he's their Hamilton. He's their do-it-all star, aggressive slot blitzer, whatever you want from him. Really good player. And then they trade for a linebacker that I heard someone describe as, he's the carpet that brings the whole room together, or the lamp that brings the whole room together. Yes. He just ties it all in, perfect.
The Lebowski reference. I like that.
Yeah.
Brings the room together. That was one of the baffling things, because Rams aren't getting good linebacker play, and they trade away their best linebacker, and then he ends up getting traded back to a division rival to help beat that team. And the Seahawks have done really well against the division opponents this year too on defense. So
I like where they're at.
Yeah.
And maybe they're a year away too, like Washington and Chargers and new coaching teams, but pretty successful year. One more offseason and we'll see.
So the NFC playoff picture, I think it's clear if you listen to yesterday's podcast and you look at these records, and it's the Lions and the Eagles 1-2, right? Yes. I'd be pretty surprised if it doesn't end that way, 1-2 in the NFC. Still some football to play though. The Seattle Seahawks would be the 3 seed with a 6-5 record and would have the tiebreaker over Atlanta, who's leading the South based on head-to-head win percentage.
Okay. I'm not suggesting Seattle's out of the woods though in that division.
Right.
I'm not suggesting that, but I like their chances. I like where they sit.
Do you think we'll get to the rest of this. So the Vikings and Green Bay Packers in a great spot right now, 9 wins and 8 wins respectively, 5-6 seeds in the NFC. There's only, because we talked about the AFC, I asked the question. I'm going to answer it first. Are we done? Well, we know who 6 of the playoff teams are going to be. At least, whoever wins the West, whoever wins the South: Packers, Vikings, Lions, Eagles. Those are going to be the 6 of the 7 playoff teams. And then the 7
fill in the blanks of who, right?
Barely hanging on right now at 7 is the Washington Commanders at 7-5. Then you have the Cards at 6-5 behind them. You have the 5-6 Bucks, the 5-6 Rams, the 5-6 49ers. And so those are the other contenders. Who jumps into that fray? Or do we already know who the playoff teams are going to be in the NFC?
I like what Tampa's doing, and they have a pretty easy schedule going forward, and they can run the football, and I like how Baker's playing. But I guess the way I would phrase it is, if we know the Lions and Eagles will win their division, Somebody's win the South, somebody's win the West. Vikings and Packers are wild card teams. That leaves the 7 spot. I would bet it's not Washington. I would bet it's either Tampa, Atlanta, or a West team.
So here is the reason I think it's going to be Washington, and why the team that has the best chance probably is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Bucs, get Mike Williams back, and they've already done so well, better than I thought after some of the losses they had. The defense starting to figure things out a little bit more because they had some problems on that side of the ball as well. So Todd Bowles, give him credit. Baker Mayfield, the confidence and the swagger that they're playing with right now is really fun. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the only team that has a couple of ways to get in.
Yeah.
I guess the Seahawks and the Cardinals, it looks like more like now that there could be a wild card team in the NFC West, more likely than I thought there was before. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a 5-3 conference record right now. And so they have the best shot at, let's say multiple teams are 9-8, winning the tiebreaker and getting a wild card spot. But here's the problem is it's just like what we talked about on the AFC side with the Broncos and the Chargers. The Washington Commanders already have that lead. The Commanders only need to go 500 the rest of the way to get to 10 wins, where the Bucs, the Rams, the Niners, they have to go 5-1 to get to 10 wins.
Okay, here's one more wrinkle, because we did this with the AFC. I looked at the current conference losses. The Rams and Niners already have 5. Ouch. That's going to be, if we're fighting for wild cards, this is what matters. Conference losses. They already have 5. Ouch. Seattle and the Cardinals have 4. Not so great. The Commanders have 3. The Bucs have 3. So that's really, really nice. But Atlanta only has 2. So if Tampa wins the South, Atlanta might find themselves as that 7 seed.
Interesting. Okay. So right now, it's up to Washington to grab onto a branch and not continue to fall down off the cliff, right?
Right above water,
and win some games, and they're in, and we know the 7 teams, give or take, who wins the West and who wins the South. Otherwise, it's going to be, there's some chaos could ensue here, but man, these teams, I'm looking at the Seahawks.
Tampa's one of the ones I trust the most. Tampa.
I do too, but they're 5-6 right now.
I know.
And the Niners too, they looked awful last week. Obviously, they have to be healthy, and you need Bosa and Purdy, or they're cooked anyway. But I could see them getting hot.
And
they
all have the highest ceiling still.
All these teams in the North and the South, or the West and the South, keep losing games. And it's like, all right,
this might change your opinion. This might change your opinion.
And you're in. And I think Washington can get to 10 easier than Tampa.
However, this might change your opinion. Tampa goes to Carolina, hosts Vegas, goes to the Chargers, goes to Dallas, hosts Carolina, hosts New Orleans. They might be favored in 5 of 6 games. And they could win in LA against the Chargers.
What's Atlanta's schedule?
All right, here we go. It is coming off a bye right now. Chargers at home, at Minnesota, yuck. At Vegas, good. Giants at home, wonderful. At Washington, Carolina. They both have pretty soft schedules, as we knew that whole division does. I bet they both get in.
And the head-to-head is over. Did they split?
Yeah. I was just going to look it up because I wasn't 100% sure. Falcons beat the Bucs twice. Falcons are going to the playoffs.
So the Bucs have to be a game up on the Falcons to win the.
Yeah.
And they could. And if they're tied.
But they both have easy schedules.
And they both have conference. They look good in the conference. So the Bucs are going to lose out on the tiebreaker to the Falcons at least. But they could beat some other teams in the tiebreaker.
I think they're fighting with Washington to get in for that 7 spot.
And again, it's all about winning your division there, because I still think it's very likely that the Washington Commanders can win 3 games more than these other teams going, 5-1.
Yes. I just want to pull up Washington's schedule super quick. Tennessee this week, a bye, which is wonderful. At New Orleans, Philly, yuck, at home. Atlanta at home. At Dallas. There's a couple more wins in there. You beat Tennessee this week, you're back in the driver's seat in your building.
There's going to be chaos. They're not all going to get to 10 wins. There's going to be, is a 9-win team going to get in is a big question too, because then that's when things get super interesting. All right.
Certainly could happen.
And what are these teams, Falcons, Bucks, keep multiple steps forward in a row instead of taking that step back, right? It's all one of these teams has to do. As we talk about Washington getting to getting 3 more wins, getting to 10 wins.
Like Miami's that team. They are taking steps in a row. It's just too late.
Right. Well, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Don't be in a hole that you need steps in a row just to get back to even.
Yeah.
All right. That's let us know what you think. AFC, NFC. Who's going to win it? Who are going to get those playoff spots? Still some interesting games to go, and not quite settled. Although it's more settled now than the parity of the NFL we've grown accustomed to in recent years, in my opinion. Less parity in the league right now than in the recent past. Let us know what you think at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Drop a comment on YouTube. Matt and I back tomorrow right here. Peacock and Williamson.